死。
And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to the desert of the real. I am Miguel Connor, and I am your pompatus of Gnosis. We are down another rabbit hole. Welcome, everybody, again. This is April Fools, and the perfect day for this show. What did the Bee Gees sang? I started a joke and started the whole world crying. What did Robert Frost say? Forgive, O Lord, my little jokes on thee, and I'll forgive thy great big one on me. And the Gnosticism, parody, mockery, and all that is necessary because this simulation is truly a joke. On an interesting side note, April 1st is 2022. It's my 10-year anniversary since my last relapse of drugs. So by some providence, I have been 10 years clean this time around, and it's very excited. That is no joke. That is the true. I sobered up on 2012 April 1st. So, but anyway, glad to see people are already getting into the chat room. Regardless of being April 1st, just sit back, enjoy the ride, put on your favorite Eddie Rabbit tune in the background, whatever you want to do, and just we've got a great show tonight and a lot of good news going on. So without further ado, I would like to welcome back the Reverend David Parry. How are you, David? And thanks for coming back on the show.
Oh, I trust you and Lance are felicitous. Yeah, pretty cool, pretty happy. In third world Britain with increasing political and economic problems, which could have been avoided, but that's a different issue. Yeah, I'm okay. You know, April Fools in this neck of the woods tended to just be the morning. I mean, the tradition was you'd walk up to blind strangers and do things like pinch and punch for the first of the month and no returns, as they say in the schoolyard. I think if you did that heartwarming custom these days, you'd probably be laid out on the deck. But yeah, in this part of the world, it was only the mornings, and you'd all go off for a civilized luncheon and maybe a pint or two afterwards. Although it's lovely to see how the custom varies in different parts of the world. Very, very happy with your news. That's a man's achievement. And yeah, I love Aeon Byte. What can I say? Cool show.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, there's a meme going around that says April Fools is the one time out of the year where people use their critical judgment for news and other. It's the one time of the year that people just don't buy the propaganda. We're suspicious of anything, which we should be the rest of the year, suspicious of any news or information out there, especially on the internet. So but somebody who's always for the joke and who's always skeptical, thank God, and that is the Moondog Vance. Vance, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine. I just joined the Unarius movement and traded in my car for Flying Saucer, which I bought from the Archon. So, and by the way, our custom here in the United States is on April Fools, the politicians tell the truth for the whole morning.
Nobody believes them either. What a
and
mess.
It's still morning here in California, and it's still morning by you, right, Miguel? Because 11 o'clock by you. So,
yeah, we're 5:05 in the waning empire. So.
Oh, it's waning out there.
Oh, and good riddance to it. It caused too much trouble in its heyday, and it's still causing troubles now. Go,
Absolutely.
go.
Yeah, well, the American empire is also waning too, but yeah, it's causing a lot of trouble as it is, and it's been causing a lot of trouble. So we'll see where it goes. As Philip K. Dick said, the empire never ended. So we'll see where the hologram shifts. Maybe it'll shift to your house, David, and you can be the emperor of this world.
Oh, I can't imagine anything more terrible. I mean, in real geopolitical terms, I mean, remember, I do a lot of work with Central Asia. And actually, I'm still in heavy contact with all of my Russian friends. Very different view of what's going on at the present. Surprisingly different. So the evil hand of propaganda is certainly weaving the British press. But if you look at you know, those parts of the world and what they're saying, their fear. How about this? In Central Asia, their fear is that the American empire wanes too quickly and power passes speedily to Beijing. And they can't imagine anything more terrible. Am I allowed to give a weird little anecdote quickly?
Of course. Yeah, please do.
Thank you. I mean, a couple of years ago, I was at the University of Osh in Kyrgyzia, which is this paradisial country. I mean, the spectacles of nature are beyond belief. People go there for food tourism across the Russian Federation. It's not even got to the stage where you need to label anything organic because it's organic. Right? The flavors, the size of the meals, unbelievable. They eat and they drink till they drop. I was in the university chatting away, talking about poetry, as is my wont. And I noticed the Chinese cultural attaché was being given a cold shoulder. And I thought, that's odd, because you always get the impression over here they're all hand in glove together. And the Kyrgyz were clearly, almost turning their backs on this really, really significant guest. So I went over there and said, well, what's going on here? And he said, oh, they don't like us. And I said, well, making a flippant European remark, oh, history and all that sort of stuff. And he said, no, it's not that. It's because we're building robotic trains along a new Silk Road. And they're at the stage now of building each other and repairing themselves. And they don't even need to talk to human beings. And the Kyrgyz are worried that it completely, bypasses their economy and all the concerns that they've got, humanitarian concerns. And that's why they're not speaking to me. So I thought, oh, well, they might have a point then. When you get to the stage that the trains don't even need to talk to human beings, and you'll be able to get, they are saying, in the space of hours from China to Europe, that really changes everything. And with their human rights record and the way they treat minorities, I mean, that for me is equally scary.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure China doesn't have a good record on gay rights, do they, David?
No, I mean, we're diagnosed as sick, and then we go to a sanatorium, and then our organs are harvested. So that's what happens in China, unless you're a huge, there's no aristocracy in China. So unless you're a party official, and you can stand in the great meeting they all have once a year and say, I'm gay, and oh yes sir, yes sir, yes sir.
Rules for thee, but not for me.
The new emperor, if he says it, then there's no worry. But if anybody else says it, no. I mean, like the Uyghurs. I mean, I've got lots of Uyghur friends. A lot of them are over here because they're incredibly rich in their culture, their music, their art. And what they're trying to do is not only reduce the entire nation physically. Yes, that does sound, I'm trying to avoid the word because I don't want to upset my friends. But as it sounds, that is what they're doing. So they're wiping out entire populations. And weirdly, the organ donation and organs for sale on the black market is rocketing through the roof. So we have to be very careful. Not your ordinary Chinese guy and gal. No one's ever talking about that. But on very, very dangerous political elites that care about nothing. I'll say one more thing, Miguel, then I'll shut up and hand you back. A friend of mine is a great playwright over there. I mean, he used to be Minister of Culture, Sultan Rayo. And I was sat at his dinner table an evening or two after that meeting. And he said, look, why didn't we talk to this guy? We're all Abrahamists. Now, people can take from that what they want. So, it all comes from the prophet Abraham, whatever that means. And he said, if a Chinese soldier is told to go and execute somebody, he'll shoot them in the back of the head and it won't be wrong. If a Kyrgyz or a Central Asian soldier, a Kazakh soldier is told to execute someone, he'll shoot them through the back of the head. But deep down, he will know it is wrong. And that is an ontological difference. You cannot just escape that level of right and wrong. There's something intuitive, no matter what modern discourse says, there's something intuitive, but they won't recognize it. They won't register it. They've gone through this process of training whereby that simply doesn't arise anymore. And that is modern day China.
Wow. Yeah, and for the audience, a cool side note, it should be mentioned that the Uyghur, when they had an empire for a while, they were Manichaean until that was suppressed, I believe, when the Chinese, somebody took over in the bloodbath that is human history. But it's an interesting side note. side note. Well, let's get to the show. I think again, as Aeon Bite, if we can get to that wickedness in high places, as Paul talked about, then we can cut off the source and hopefully transform human thought for to stop all this insanity. Like you said, propaganda in Russia, I'm sure it's bad. The propaganda in the West is just as bad with Telegraph and the Guardian. I mean, both sides are just they're just really piling the bullshit on, and it's up to us to again be critical as we talk on this April Fool's Day. Tell them that we know that the joke is on us, and we're about to give them a little better ditties and stories than they could possibly have. And that's our job here at Aeon Biden, hopefully others in the alternative media. For the audience, you know the drill. If you have any questions for David, please write them in all caps. Write a lot of questions so that Vance can get to you. If you have a super chat, of course, we will put you at the top, but we do try very hard. Vance works very hard to get to everybody's question, and sometimes we're just not going to do it, and we do apologize, but this is the nature of the game. Yes, the topic today is the Nephilim. I don't have much news for you. Great shows coming on April. We've got shows on Robert Johnson and the Crossroads, the mystical side of the blues. We got shows on LaVey and the Church of Satan. We got shows on the Illuminati. Vincent actually joined finally after all these years. We got shows on, so many cool topics. Mary Magdalene, Jason Reza Drajani will come back to talk about his novel, The Uberman. So variety is the spice of Gnosis. So hang on to your seats, hang on to your knickers, if you can, your orthodox knickers. But enough of me. David, we talked about getting you on to talk about besides the Archons, one of the favorite villains in the occult circles, the Nephilim. So tell us about, I guess it starts with your conference. Tell the audience about this conference you are the architect of.
Firstly, I need to explain, excuse me, something from, since you're both friends of mine, and hopefully it's a similar sort of crowd turning up, from an anomaly from my last talk on this show. I did use the name Valentinius for Valentinus. That I was told was a mystery, and you know they haven't told me what it is. How many years ago was that show? And it's about
what word did you use?
Valentinius, because inside the stream I'm in, you don't say Valentinus, you say Valentinius. Now remember, that's an Italian Gnostic stream, and they would claim that that's a particular type of configuration for a particular purpose. I lost contact with them. They got cold feet. They're not speaking to me openly at the minute. Excuse me. I'll have a sip of water in a minute. They were worried about the present activities of the Vatican. I think in Anglo-American circles, you always get to think, Pope Francis, old cuddly liberal, mostly, not completely. So why are they feeling threatened? Curiously, they did feel threatened, and they cut off all communication with me. So at the moment, that side of my life is sort of a bit of a one-man band, which I'm a little sad about. And it means I can't unravel those mysteries further until they tell me what's going on and why they did that. Anyway, let's get to we
can still do Valentinius. We'll just have to talk with an Italian accent. Valentinius, oh mamma mia, che passa with the demiurgos? Go ahead.
Was it leave slowly? Leave. I mean, architect. Well, I'll give you a potted history of Nephilim anthropology. I mean, when I'm not wearing yay, my other hat is in British theatre, as I think you all know. I don't see a complete division between the two, because what I'm trying to do personally is either put on metaphysical work or works with a moral imperative that sometimes show the so-called good authorities in a very bad light indeed. Maybe that's what I'm a theatrical pariah, who knows? So there's a crossover point in all of that. To keep body and soul together, sometimes between projects, I mean, I've directed and produced 9 major plays so far. I'm not daily in the business, because I can't imagine anything more awful. Having to stand up and slap Will Smith across the face. Absolutely awful. Is it only me that agrees with Jim Carrey? I think that's really unacceptable. career building on that level is really, really totally unacceptable. Some people, right, this is theatrical, David speaking. Some people work very, very hard to get to that night and make a lot of personal sacrifices. And his shadow is now over all of it. I think it's a disgrace. I really do. Anyway. So we put on conferences, we put on events sometimes, either poetry related or, you know, weird stuff related. And it was actually in 2013 that this was meant to kick off. I was speaking to the Estonian author, researcher, anthropologist Vladimir Wiedemann, a very big name in that part of the world, not so much here, unfortunately, about, you know, I wanted to do something on giantism. And he said, oh, you know, why not Nephilim, why not the new anthropology? I mean, he was one of those people actually involved in the new anthropology at Moscow State University in the early to mid 80s. They are arguably the first people to start coming along and saying, hang on, you're not just looking at cavemen, Cro-Magnons, Homo sapiens. Actually, the picture is much richer. You have big guys, you have small guys, and you have nearly everything in the middle. And they were collecting archaeological evidence to that effect. Of course, that's still when the old, not the new Cold War, when the old Cold War was still raging. Basically, the scholars couldn't get the funding to come over here. We couldn't get the funding to go over there. So it actually didn't go that far. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. You know, you're physically, actually, professionally involved in all that. Let's put something on. Another weird story for this afternoon. So I was talking to my band of intimates, which includes the Reverend Jim Wilhelmsen. How about that? Queer pastor has friends who are conservative evangelicals. Hey, what can you do? What can you do? Who said to me something cryptic and mystical. Oh, Nephilim, they don't like being talked about. You know, I said, yeah, evangelical nonsense. 2 weeks later, the entire project had collapsed. Our completely out of the blue, our modest credit line with the bank was withdrawn with no explanation given whatsoever. We'd been booking flights, we'd been hiring accommodation. I went to have it out personally with the branch manager and was told it's for your good. How is that for our good? How is that for our good? We've got a project with people flying in from America. And they promised they'd basically put us back online before the date, and they didn't. So the whole thing came crashing down around us. So that was 2013, and it was basically the year before last that my partner said, actually, that was quite a good idea. Why don't we revive that? And I was a bit skeptical, thinking, you know, in this day and age, you know, day and age of conspiracies and ancient aliens and things floating around in the sky, does anybody want to talk about it? Back then, it would have been quite groundbreaking. I'm not so sure it is now, although maybe we still are in a different way. So I thought, well, okay, let's give it a spin. We started last April as a virtual conference. To my absolute horror, sold out virtual tickets. It was about a 7-hour, 9-hour day. It nearly killed my partner and myself, because for us it was a test run, you know, to see if it would work or not. We were nearly physical wrecks by the time the day had gone. It worked. So I thought, okay, let's take the next tentative step, because this year will be our first meeting as I originally envisioned it. So we tried a trial run of a hybrid event. The one thing the lockdowns have done for me is convince me they're good ideas for theatrical types. You can have an audience the other side of the planet, provided they're coordinated with the time, and really enrich the entire experience for everybody. It's the one and only good thing. We went to the Royal Asiatic Society. I have the very great honor of being an elected fellow there because of my work with Central Asia. We tried it out. Again, huge interest from all sorts of people, born-again Christians, New Age types, truth seekers. And the unique selling point, the USP of our conference, is that we're not interested in a point of view. What we want to do is look across the board to see what different people are saying about this phenomena, biblical mysteries, mythologies, literatures, you know, what different people are saying about something that's global. The idea of giantism is global, and what it might have meant. I got into the weird position last October of having to frog march a born-again Christian to the door, as I was telling Miguel off air recently. I'm sorry, there's such a thing as good manners. You know, if you're shouting down a speaker, no, you can't stay. It's really as simple as that. I sort of turned a deaf ear at first to the whole thing. She wouldn't stop. Yeah, right. It may not be your opinion, darling, but it's not their opinion. Okay. So I found myself doing what I hadn't done since my years of the Edinburgh Festival, of escorting someone to the door and giving them the old heave ho and get out and don't come back. You know, so that was, but it showed me one thing, that how is this possible, you two? Tensions are still running high about subjects like the Nephilim, and interest, it's still running high. And what they don't like, the more narrow-minded amongst our associates, is anybody else saying anything else. And I thought, we still have that cutting edge. We still have that, you know, metal against metal gravitas to what we're doing. So that was a success. This year, it's a 2-day event because we've learned from our previous trial runs. It will be at the David Game College, a wonderful venue in East London, Northeast London, on the Saturday the 29th of October, and hopefully at Rudolf Steiner House near Baker Street on Sunday the 30th. Much more close-knit, much more convivial, and I think we're having a Sunday roast together with some of the speakers. So the idea wasn't simply about Nephilim, if this answers your question, Miguel. It was actually about giantism and what that meant. My own personal view, which I don't want to talk too much about, because all I do at the conference is give something called the Steve Ash Memorial Lecture in memory of a very good old friend of mine who passed over far too early, Steve Ash, the occultist, the political anarchist, a man who believed that the human condition and this world could be a much better place, a much better thing. He's sorely missed by all of us. So I give that. And all I do is give an outline of the conference and, you know, what the speakers are going to say, but nothing else. I mean, my own personal view as a minister is that it does say very clearly these are biblical mysteries.
Before we do that, I want to put the Bible quotes, and then we can tackle that, David. Yep. So you heard it, audience. October, check it out. It's hybrid if you want to go in. And yeah, whether we like it or not, the Nephilim have really captured the imagination of everybody. Like you said, conservative Christians, people in the occult. And not, I mean, there is either something, we can discuss it, some archetypal force, some unconscious. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's aliens. Maybe it's our desire to know that we are being controlled. There's so many ways to approach it, and it's just enticing. So, but for everybody to see, I got it here. And that's the interesting part, is that the giants or the Nephilim really only appear in 2 parts of the Bible. And I want to put them right here. They appear in Genesis 6:4. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children with them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. And of course, the book of Enoch, which has also captured the interests of all arenas, goes further into this. Some say, yeah, the Nephilim are just these ancient, powerful warriors. They are giants. Unfortunately, Nephilim is such an obscure term. We don't know if it's fallen angel or giant. So maybe making it obscure is what entices people. And then you have... in Numbers 2, I don't want you to be a ticker. Hold on a second. Don't be a ticker. Where are they? Let's see, right here. Numbers 13:32. And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who came of the Nephilim. And we were in our own side as grasshoppers. And so we were in their side. So those are the 2 places where we find the Nephilim. They appear, obviously, again, in the book of Enoch. And there's been a million ways of trying to dissect them. So, David, what is your stance on this, or how would you explain it? I mean, if you're obviously a Valentinian and a follower of Swedenborg, you're probably going to be uber allegorical and symbolical on this, right? Because that's how Valentinus and Swedenborg would approach the Old Testament.
Look, what can I say? As they say in this part of the world, I've been nicked, I've been rumbled. Yes, of course. For me, it's to do with archetypes. It's to do with, you know, sort of metaphorical forces, not simply metaphorical. It's to do with the stuff of religion. I mean, what tends to frustrate me about the ancient aliens mob isn't the fact they're talking about these things. Good on them. I mean, I remember reading Chariots of the Gods by Eric von Daniken at school and having had a great time. You know, it's what they're doing post that. I mean, they're reducing religion to sort of bits of stuff floating around in the skies and bewildered aliens coming out and wondering what on earth is going on. As opposed to the inward journey and mystical experience, which is really what religion is all about. It's not a history book. It's not meant to be. It's not a very badly written book of technologies. It's not that. You need to get Jungian. You need to get Valentinian. You need to realize that the inward journey, you know, what do religious books talk about? The inward journey. Do they mention those other things sometimes? Yes, but that's not their primary purpose. Their primary purpose as works of literature is to discuss the within. The only time I'm sort of hoisted on a slightly different petard is I like Blavatsky. You know, it's in volume 2 of The Secret Doctrine where she starts talking overtly about Nephilim and realizing what hardly anybody else does. I mean, what a masterpiece that book really is in both volumes, you know. That, you know, you're looking at and I go for this one, you know, the arc of spirit, pure spirit is descending on it, evolutionary, not devolutionary. I mean, it's devolutionary in the sense that it's coming into matter, but not overall. I mean, it's an arc and spirit is aware of that. It's descending through all the various densities, as you'd say these days, to realize something about itself. And you get giant forces from Lemuria. I think they'd have been so abstract and so energetic, you know, pure energy beings, metaphors. Please don't anybody jump on your metaphors. What else do you say? You know, they're pure fields of consciousness, and they're trying to take form and they're trying to hold on to here. And really, when you get to the Atlanteans, in her view, much more physically powerful than us, more robust, much larger than us, with civilizations of their own, much more advanced than us, that they too, I mean, at the beginning of that whole period, they too aren't really as physical as people like us, but by the end of that period, they are physical. And really, that's, she would say, forgive me, Theosophist, if you're looking, like paraphrasing rapidly, massively, that really is the origin of the Nephilim stories. And I can go for that, you know, spiritual energies coming into play in our universe and interacting with our physical universe in the only ways that they can for their own purposes. I can go along with that. But, you know, as I say, you know, for me, if you're forgetting the inner journey, the allegory, the myth, the symbol, you've really forgotten what books like the Bible or the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita are actually trying to do. I mean, my additional problem with someone like von Daniken, you know, and more power to him, is that it's not good enough to talk about Ezekiel's vision of wheels within wheels and leave it there. I mean, the god riding on that chariot is very clearly described. And it reads rather like the god Apollo. So it's not little grey men coming around and poking things and weighing and measuring things. The god is actually very clearly described. And also, you know, the wheels within wheels. I mean, so, you know, people are forgetting their grasp of poetry. A month is a wheel, a season is a wheel, and only a god can ride on a chariot that actually has that type of wheel. So, you know, there are more primary ways of reading these texts that are to do with the inner journey. So in other words, what's the vision of Ezekiel? What is nature? These great cycles of nature telling us about the soul and the spirit and where we're journeying. So is that any answer to you, Miguel? Yeah, for me, allegory, that's me.
Yeah. Again, you, Valentinus, Swedenborg, St. Augustine, that all. Jung would too, but then towards the end, I think he, like he said, these flying objects do have a ontological existence. They can appear on radar. They can't force, they have energy. And Jung actually wrote the CIA wanting to know more about that. So it's not either or. These, an egregore, a thought form, an idea can be interactive with other things. And Jung even said archetypes are quasi-sentient. They can manifest in our world and change reality. So I know it's subtle and people don't like that word, subtle or nuance, but it's the way we have to start thinking. We can't just think, like you said, little green man probing our butts out here, or we can't think of it's all just a story that the ancients invented. So there's a middle path to these things. And Vance, do you have a question for David, or does the audience have a question for David?
Yeah, we got one question so far. I was going to mention that even materialism is allegorical if you really look at it, right?
Yeah.
Because things aren't solid. We actually, if you believe physics, there's electromagnetic forces, and even the description of physics is an allegory, a symbolic allegory. Look at chemistry, physics. We describe it in terms of mathematical symbols, right? That's another allegory. So it's just a matter of which level of allegory you pick. So having said that, Oswald Spengler wanted to know, and I guess this is getting in, starting us into our discussion of the Nephilim's characteristics. Do you think, Reverend Parry, that the rhesus negative folks, RH negative, have any connection to the Nephilim and or ancient aliens?
Oswald Spengler. I remember reading you at university. I thought you were dead.
The Oswald Spengler.
He's the next version.
I'm very pleased we're still in contact. I enjoyed your books, no. I think I know who you are. Oh gosh, I mean, you're asking the wrong person on the panel. I mean, I assiduously,
don't know anything about this. Yeah.
Well, I assiduously, as the founding producer, as they'd say in the biz, I try and keep clear as far as I can of our true stars, all of which have a different opinion on this topic. Certainly, I think the Reverend Jim Wilhelmsen has quite a sort of physicalist view, and I think Gary Wayne, because he's also a born-again conservative, I believe. I think they are the people on the panel that actually look in that direction. I've heard about there's a connection with certain types of blood and certain blood groupings that are meant to be linked with giantism. I'm not a biologist. I think it's interesting. And yes, I'm sure, because some people, physical people in recent history, have been inordinately tall. And it's not always a recessive gene. It's not always an anomaly. Sometimes it runs in families. Therefore, where does that come from? How is that triggered? For me, it doesn't necessarily mean ancient aliens and little grey men probing everybody. Can't they get over that? I mean, haven't they learnt enough by now, to just get on with whatever they're doing? I mean, for God's sake, I'm aware of that, and I'm aware of the link.
As long as the aliens bring you flowers first before the probing, is that what you're saying?
Well, how much do you get for alimony? So yeah, I mean, so I'm aware of the connection on a medical level. I certainly myself couldn't be drawn into saying that all of a sudden we found a biochemical trigger mechanism linking us back to aliens and giants. I couldn't say that with my hand on my heart. But the caveat to that is I'm not one of the people on the panel that's an expert in those fields, and I would leave it to them. So yes, I'm aware that there's a link between blood types and giantism. Can we go further than that? I personally would not, but I know some people who would.
Okay. I got a good one for you. Nephilim versus archons. Do you think they're the same thing?
My God, there's a battle royal. I mean, firstly, taking up your point, Vance, I mean, if you go back to the old days of the Soviet Union, which could be horrendous, I mean, a nightmare on stilts, let's face it. But some of the founding ideas are incredible. The thirst for social justice, which led up to the nightmare, is actually incredible. And the sort of ideologies that were floating around in that pregnant and very evolutionary period. Remember, I'm talking about the process leading up to, not the actual evil empire. You know, they started saying things like, well, do we really know what the potentialities of matter are? I mean, right, we're using that as the base block, but what is it? You know, and how far can it go and how many levels has it got? I mean, when you start going down that route, all of a sudden you're sort of coming from one side to Jungian's sentient archetypes, and they seem to be meeting a certain point of interconnection there, which is very, very interesting. Archons must be lords of things. They must be controllers. They must be immensely powerful entities, no matter what ontology we give them, who descend from deity. Deity really cannot be used in any other word apart from an absolute. I mean, I've seen it nowadays. You talk about gods, deities. That's actually quite incorrect. There's only one deity, the absolute beingness. I mean, so, archons in their emanatory process downward would still hold sway over the sphere of activity, the sphere of consciousness, the density, whatever that they are born into and that they represent. That is not really the case with Nephilim. I mean, certainly it's unwise. I mean, the complex of Bible stories. If you listen to the evangelicals, put it that way, the flood occurred because the Almighty wanted to wipe out a problem with the genetic pool. I mean, that's got me worried already. You wipe out a problem with the genetic pool by drowning everybody. So that has me. It doesn't have you too worried. It has me worried. So I don't think it has you too worried. It really has me worried. You know. So, and they do turn up afterwards again. I mean, you know, it's not correct to say they're not there. They're not necessarily named in that particular way, but you get the Rephaim, you get the Anakim, you get strange hadith secondary commentaries around the crucifixion. Yes, they are. They do the research. You know, talking about the mighty bulls of Bashan. That strikes me as different ways of talking about the Nephilim. It's unwise to make a very clear distinction that's made in Genesis 6. Those who fly above, they are not the Nephilim. Those who fly above, in some ancient renditions, as I was saying to Miguel recently, even the word angeloi is used grudgingly. They don't really want to use that word. Some scholars are now saying that's not the appropriate word in the original. What they would have said was blah, 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 blah. And you end up with all sorts of variants. No, I mean, those that fly above were the real powers. They appear to be like the Nephilim, like the Archons. And of course, it's they that make the misdemeanor, a cosmic error, by interacting in, I mean, is it sex? I mean, it's so for me, it's not clear. And what type of sex is it? You know, they know the daughters of men, a forbidden thing, and it's that union which actually gives birth to forbidden things, to offshoots, to the Nephilim. So the Nephilim themselves certainly, in my view, wouldn't be Archons. Those who fly above, that is such a strange description.
The Watchers or the Egregori in Greek.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. You know, and that really, I wish we were paying, if I was a contributor, if I was a panelist on my own panel, then that's what I'd be talking about, because I think everybody's missing the real fascination of this story. Who and what is that? And what was the transgression? I mean, because it seems to be such a potent anomaly, a conscious, deliberate rejection of something, that it caused all this mayhem afterwards. Isn't that fascinating? Whereas the Nephilim are the heroes, the mighty men of renown, the demigods of the ancient world, going around looking cool and beating each other up. You know, I think, no, I mean, certainly they wouldn't be synonymous for me with the Archons, but that might be the Valentinian in me speaking, as opposed to other people with other paths.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because obviously in apocryphal texts, these Watchers and the Nephilim, they're the ones who teach women makeup. They're the ones who give the ideas of science and art. So ultimately, you can't see him as Promethean or as Hermes or even as Sophia, this trickster archetype that hears the fire from the divine and it's gonna light the way, but it's also gonna burn your ass. It's a double-edged sword, and you humans need to figure this out. Also, if you want to get super allegorical, you always say, you know, people get angry, or they, you know, especially in the occultic community, where they're trying to cancel Zeus because he's such a horn dog going chasing skirts, but so are the watches, right? But this is a great allegory that when the sky comes down, the heavens, the information for the heavens, it's always going to go to the woman, because the woman, they're the depository of wisdom, the medicine, the magic, the astrology. So this information allegorically is going to make women pregnant with this information, and the women are the ones who give birth to this information for the tribe. So yeah, divine comes down to the woman. This information is dangerous. You don't want it. It's going to destroy your life, like you're being raped, but you're going to give birth to these demigods, this information that's going to help the tribe advance and move. It's a great responsibility of women. So I know this is like uber allegorical, and I don't want to give Zeus a pass. Don't get me wrong, but just saying.
Yeah. What happened to the female Nephilim? You know, they must be mad.
Yeah, they're the ones who would ask directions to come down to Earth, not the male.
The Nephilim, or whatever you call it.
Now, careful, you two. The brilliant beginning is verging into sexism now. Be careful.
Yes, that is true. We'll be canceled.
All right, back to the questions.
Yeah, back to any other questions, Vance?
Let's see. That's all I see right now.
But here's a question I would have for you, David.
Yeah.
How do you explain the concept of evil? Because the Nephilim are interesting, because it shows us, again, how did evil come into the world? Same with the archons. And it could be a mixed bag. You introduce gnosis and enlightenment. It's a double-edged sword that will burn you, but also light the way. So the Nephilim are great because it really approaches evil in so many different ways for each individual. But how would you say is the idea of evil? And Swedenborg believed in evil spirits, and how the powers of hell can corrupt our mind and make our ego gigantic. So tell us. I know it's
Thank you for the small ones first.
Let's get out of the way.
I mean, there are whole libraries dealing with this issue.
Well, here's a question. Do you believe in evil spirits out there?
Yes.
Disembodied spirits that are up to no good. Okay.
Yeah. But that must be taken within a much bigger Gnostic context. By the way, what you said a minute ago was beautiful about wisdom descending into the woman. I think that's absolutely beautiful and probably historically traceable. We, you know, in our desperate patriarchal need, oh God, am I sounding too gay? Sorry. In our desperate patriarchal need for the last 2,000 years to actually make men the be all and end all, we really do need, and I don't think it's quite what the feminists are saying. I mean, if you look back at the records, really you find a warrior goddess at the beginning. You don't find a fecund mother. So then you've got to start asking why are they talking about a warrior goddess and not Mother Earth, not Mother Nature? Right, I'm going to get a bit highfalutin on you both for a minute. I mean, at university, I don't know how ministers train in America. I majored in Hinduism and minored in Buddhism.
Wow.
Because I wanted to find out what other people were saying, which was included in my training. So I don't know what happens over there. I mean, we started reading the Puranas, and I was just blown away. There's one called the Markandeya Purana, which is talking about a female absolute, female deity. And all the gods get together because buffalo is the origin of error. Buffalo has wandered into this type of cosmos, which it has no right doing, and it's causing trouble simply because it's wandered into the wrong place in the wrong way. It just shouldn't be there. And what the gods do, realizing their inadequacy before this mighty beast, is actually generate all their Shaktis together, the female energies, that become one goddess, the Devi Mahatmya. And it's only she that has the authority and power to put Buffalo back where he should be. That for me was an eye-opener on questions of evil. You know, I'd read previously, you know, evil is good misunderstood, you know, the great poetic statement of, you know, what are we talking about when we, you know, about evil, when we're talking about evil? Oh God, how do I get into this? Certainly, I'm not denying. Right, let's do this a different way. I think Gnostics are at their worst. Modern Gnostics are at their worst when they're talking about good and evil, because they side with the counterpoint, and not realizing that the counterpoint is simply rebellion. I mean, there are lots of things against that type of Abrahamic tradition which simply are malevolent and toxic. So, you know, it's far too simple to say this story is the source of so many problems. What I'm now doing is standing by another story. I think that's dangerous. Right, is this me being I was called it a couple of years ago, a Valentinian, what was it? A vanilla Valentinian. Yes, I confess. I love good things. I love good, beautiful, and true things. I confess. And that's the Bithos, of course. For me, Alexander Pope was on the right lines. Most of it is something that's misunderstood or before its time. For instance, when Swedenborg is talking about the hell worlds, he links it in with notions of judgment. The judgments are not eternal. They may seem eternal to the spirits within the hell worlds for one simple reason. Those spirits have put themselves there. Nobody else does. Nobody else has. You know, there's the story that, you know, how many people did Christ save? Remember, it's an allegory. When he descended into hell during Easter, on Easter Saturday, when he descended into hell, how many people did he take back to heaven with him? Is it now empty, or is it now hardly anybody? Certainly, Swedenborg does believe in toxicity. At the moment, in the type of culture we're living in, it's very hard not to believe in certain types of toxicity. Some people, you know, what was it? Oh God, why choose the imp of the perverse? It was Alexander, no, Edgar Allan Poe that said that. You know, we won't understand the true mystery of the human condition until we know why some people would choose to do the wrong thing. Therefore, I can't say there are no evils in the sense we normally mean by that word. But what I am saying certainly is there's a bigger picture. And to me, even the holy scriptures of the world are actually talking about something of an error, you know, something of an error in very high places that somehow has a trickle-down effect into lower planes. And by the time it gets here, you're looking at something Manichaean in the wrong sense, you know, yes, no, right, wrong, good, bad, light, darkness, which it simply isn't on the plane of origination. And whatever the error is, I mean, it strikes me that even in the Hindu material, you're looking at something almost like an equation, you know, something in the equation didn't manage to work out, and it's working on it, whatever these intelligences are. They're trying to work out the you know, how does it reach zero? It will reach zero in such and such a way. And that too will take, you know, ages to sink into time as we know it. I mean, you mentioned Philip K. Dick earlier, a huge hero of mine. Was it in Valis who said all of this has been sorted out in the level of eternity? It's just here. It hasn't been sorted out yet. That for me is a pure Gnostic idea. What are Gnostics? Those who are trying to find the knowledge to get them past this nonsense. Right, one more crack at contemporary Gnostics, present company accepted. Yeah, well, yeah, because you know, I'm in trouble all the time in this neck of the woods. Swallowing an ideology does not make you a Gnostic. It makes you a believer. You know, so you've swallowed the Abrahamic one, or you swallowed the Hindu one, or you swallowed the Buddhist one, or you now swallow a Gnostic one and then think you're a Gnostic and go around telling yourself you're a Gnostic. No, you're not. You're someone who swallowed a body of ideas, and you are not searching for the knowledge that sets you free. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Never a more Gnostic phrase has ever been said than that. Is that an answer, Miguel?
That's a very good answer, and I love it. Yeah.
I swallow that.
The gospel of truth does say, you know, the aeons are appearing and error came into their midst, whether it was a concept that had to be entertained or too far from the, you know, Bythos and Seji, the great silence and depth, and the all mother and father. Error came out, and she becomes the demiurge. She's a female character, but there's nothing wrong. It's just it creates a fog over our senses, and it's up to us to lift the fog and see, that everything's okay. Everything's all right outside of this fog. So that's definitely
outside in or inside out, right?
There you go. There you go. That's definitely the Valentinian. Obviously, the Sethians and others took a little more punk rock, hardcore, Arnold Schwarzenegger versus the Predator kind of attitude. I don't know why I'm bringing that movie up, but I just did. So, it was a great answer. My dog got very excited here, David. She's like, she's trying to wake up. You can wake up.
Well, I'm willing to listen to the dog. Anyone that can give me further clues, I'm willing to listen to.
They are wise. Awesome. Events. Any other questions from the audience or yourself?
Yeah, we got a few. One I missed from earlier from Children of Osiris. Do you think the idea of angels and women mating points the idea of sex magic and the idea of the magical child? Sexuality is a force to create connections between embodied and disembodied entities.
Yes. Next question.
Okay. Yeah, that was a very clear question.
There's a very clear, and my answer to all of them is yes. I think the West is incredibly bad at sex magic. Right, this is coming from an unlikely source. Okay, the minute we talk about sex magic, Big Al comes into the picture, Aleister Crowley, and you get all these images of Edwardian decadence, and the devil rides out with Dennis Wheatley, and they're all drinking incredibly dry sherry and up to God alone knows what in their, in their country estate. And it's all great, don't get me wrong. I used to know Christopher Lee. So it's all absolute, oh God, he wanted that movie remade. He's the last couple of years of his life. The angels are resting Chris wherever he is now. He was going around the major studios saying, look, with modern day technology, with modern day effects, it can make much better. And he never got his way, which was a shame. Wouldn't that be incredible? Mm-hmm. No, I mean, sort of, if you get the sort of Edwardian decadence without the historical context, I've actually a lot of time, again, something maybe from an unlikely source, but Aleister Crowley, I think as a writer, he's absolutely superlatively gifted. I love his voice. He sounds like Churchill on a bad day. I love his art. I can't stand his poetry, apart from Iopan, which I think has got an evocative quality to it. Do I feel sorry that he burnt everything away, including his family's fortune? No, you had a choice, Big Al. I'm sorry. Nobody forced you to do it. What was it? The rumor that's going around on his deathbed. The last thing he said was, I am perplexed. Well, I bet some born again type came up with that one. He was probably too drunk or out of his head on something to actually say anything. No, I mean, we get. Remember, I'm not main church. If the church had managed to, in the West, managed its own affairs better, you would have had native pagan traditions that would have been our version of Tantra, taking their rightful place by the side of these more Apollonian traditions. I have the church down as a sort of a series of Apollonian bodies looking for the ideal, and we can all row about that, argue about that later. You need, I think, like in India, you need those more earthly and earthy traditions as well. In India, they feed off each other. There's not this compartmentalization. So my trouble with Western sex magic is either it's an excuse for a bit of rumpo, why not? Enjoy yourselves, you're only young once. Or it really is this sort of weird, convoluted, transgressive, tense, possibly even psychotic, meeting of people who are trying to use transgression as a means to achieve personal power. But that's not what you do in the Far East. That's not what happens in India. That's not what happens in Tibet. That's not what happens in Mongolia. That never happened amongst the Taoists in China, which are trying to use sex to rise up the ladder of consciousness and achieve oneness with the cosmos. So my answer is yes to all of that. And I think that the impulse is healthy. The fact we're all exploring again is incredibly healthy. The fact we're looking at those materials and practices must be done. But, you know, I'd say my own personal caveat is we've got to be a little cautious about the sources we're using and what they were intending. I mean, you know, if we look at Aleister Crowley's, I can't remember because it was a poem he was tied in with the Edwardian decadent arts movement. Therefore, what he was doing is largely from that perspective. I mean, one of his master poems, it's completely gone as I'm sat here, was, you know, the central figure. If you don't read the poem carefully, you don't get it. The central figure is walking through hell, livid with syphilis, which is what he deserves, and he's enjoying every minute. And you think, well, is that what a sannyasin would talk about? Is that what the holy men of India would talk about? Even if they're most outrageous, I mean, they know how to be rebellious in India. No, because the whole thing is always about higher transcendent states. Even the Agoris, the Agori ascetics, I mean, they are cannibals when they get the chance. They go around beating people up when they all get together. They break all of the 5 taboos of Hinduism as a religious act. But people, you know, you got to be careful of the ideology behind that. They are doing that as a form of release. They are trying to release themselves from all the bonds and boundaries and achieve enlightenment. Therefore, they're not saying we reject that goal and that state. What they're saying is maybe there's a quicker way of doing it, rightly or wrongly, and it is our karma to pursue enlightenment that way. That doesn't strike me that's what the Thelemites are doing. Not all of them, some of them maybe. And it's not really what the Wiccans are doing when they're doing that. I won't mention the heathens at this point because they're normally drunk with that horn that goes around, you know, the toasting. So I'm not sure they're sort of in the right frame of mind to do anything like that. But yes, you know, good on everybody. Just keep it enlightened. Keep it enlightened. Keep it happy.
Yeah, I mean, that idea of salvation through transgression, that obviously you had the ancient Egyptians doing their sex magic, and then the Gnostic Carpocratians, Simonians, they really took that transgression. They borrowed it from the East, the sort of let's break out, let's go against the rules, it's our karma, let's experience everything. They had different tweaks, and of course, then later on you had the Persian Mazdakites, you've got the Jewish Frankians and Shabbatai Zevi. So that sort of tradition it's still in all traditions, except I think you meant except Christianity, except for the Gnostic. Yeah, the Carpocratians obviously believed in Jesus, and the Simonians and all the sex magic wild party Gnostics. So, but you're right, in Middle Ages and after that, nada. You got to look at pictures of Mary Magdalene with her shoulder bare to get excited or something. That's it.
And not even then. Not even then. You've got to control yourself.
Awesome. Any other questions from the audience, Vance? Give it to us.
Occult fan Nate. Are Nephilim bloodline families working for liberation against generationally fascist opponents? Can you speak to the idea of the White Lodge? Wow.
Is anybody working for liberation at the minute? I'm beginning to wonder in third world Britain. I have heard those stories like everybody else. I've heard that the Nephilim families have written a nasty letter to the, what was it? Is it the 3 golden dragons or the 9 golden dragons of China? Stop it or else. I've heard they've written to the Illuminati. There's a lot of letter writing going on. I don't know. I think you two are claiming you're both an Illuminatus at the moment. Have I heard that?
Card carrying, yeah.
Right, good. That's good too. My dear friend Leo Zagami offered me to be an Illuminatus. I'm sorry, I'm not rich enough. Oh God, on the journey to Italy, you're kidding. So no. I would like to think there are healthy rebellious forces working for our freedom and the betterment of all. If they are there and they are doing that, can they please do it a bit more obviously and a bit more powerfully? Because we're all beginning to sink between the, beneath the system now. I've got to be careful because I don't want this show being challenged by the woke brigade. I think after recent socio-political events, we realise how much under the cosh we actually are and how easy it is to enslave entire populations, and their willingness to go along with it without asking many questions. That's the bit that's terrified me. I hope that the Nephilim families are on the side of the good, whatever that means. I think I can answer that if anyone's interested. And I hope they're challenging the wicked powers that rule this world, because they're proving to be wicked in a sense I never dreamt of. Trying to reduce the human race to servitude is beneath contempt, and that is what is happening. Yeah, I hope so. But my dear friend, I hope so. Let's all keep the faith. Let's all sit in the streets and slap politicians and run around creating nausea, because there's still time. There's still time. Will I be able to say that in 5 years? I don't know. Let's do it now while there's time.
Well said, indeed.
Okay. New Age Luke has a question. What about giants that are the size of hills and mountains, that fight between Michael and the dragon that destroyed Earth way back a million years, or to the time of Enki and Enlil, to the flood?
Well, right. I mean, I put my personal cards on the table. I don't think you're talking about, excuse me, physical entities. You're talking about something para-physical. You're talking about something metaphysical. And just because those archetypal forces can't be weighed and measured in the way this illusion of a world actually can be, we forget this isn't the real world. Even in Plato, the physical world is not the real world. It's the shadow of something else. Mm-hmm. So do I think they're physically embattled? Why would we diminish them to being merely physical? If they're physical, and I'm open to arguments, it's not my thing. I would have thought in a world such as ours, with the type of gravitational forces it has, my God, what would it be like to get arthritis? I get terrible arthritis if you're that big. And is there any doctor in the world that could actually cure it? I would have thought that gravity and a number of other electromagnetic conditions would have made it next to impossible for them to stand up and eat and continue battling, living, let alone battling anything. Do I believe that those types of archetypal battles take place? Yes, I do. And on planes of existence much more real than ours. A lot of these near-death experiences are very interesting because they explain their perceptions of what comes next as infinitely more real than here. That's one of the side materials of all that evidence that nobody's looking at. I think that needs to be looked at a lot more clearly and carefully. There are titanic, pun intended, battles going on in the worlds of the paraphysical. But as a good Gnostic, not in the world of spirit. There is no contentious error in the world of pure spirit. It is what it is. The Bythos is the Bythos. Maybe in the far reaches of the Pleroma, where it's already beginning to shake and shudder with lower manifestations of what all that reality actually is, shadows of the real reality. Maybe that is beginning to allow that, but I'd think no. You're looking at really low emanations for these types of battles to take place, and I do believe they are on something slightly more than a merely symbolic level. Somewhere beneath, between, above, beyond myth and symbol and energetics. You're looking at the reality of all of this, and yes, those battles take place in the same way that the gentle and kind Lemurians, Madame Blavatsky's Lemuria, who were not physical in any way, shape, or form we could recognize, nevertheless had intentions, they had goals, they had aims, and part of their descent into what we would call the worlds of matter was actually coalescing and battling through that. I mean, how on earth could that be described? Maybe in those terms. We wouldn't have the intelligence that they had if you take that as real. We wouldn't have the range of non-sensory experiences they would have access to. We could only put that in the ways we're comfortable with, and a lot of that would sound like the armed conflict of physical human war. But maybe even then there's a lot, something a lot more subtle going on there. So, to paraphrase, yes, I do believe battles like that take place, but let's not always take them at face value, because normally there's something going on behind those descriptions.
Alrighty. Well, do we have one more? Time for one more?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Oswald Spengler, your friend. Now, I don't understand this question. maybe you do. Is Mount Athos inside me a dirty euphemism?
That's David's book. Yeah, that's what he's.
Not really, no. Mount Athos inside me was a Jungian way of, I've not actually been physically to Mount Athos for the simple reason it's not a travelogue and it's not a history book. I mean, what I was talking about was British literature. I mean, I was talking about something that the Britons, we're meant to be good at history here. You know, if you want to do philosophy, you go to Germany. If you want to do social sciences or fashion, you go to France. You know, what do you come here to do? You do history, you do that sort of thing. So are we getting bad at history? History and drama, there's a connection between the two. No, I mean, I was at 3 rather high-powered conferences a number of years back about Mount Athos. I was part of the World Public Forum, the dialogue between civilizations. Very kindly asked me to go along. I think because what I was saying at the time was we're very bad at how Christianity came to this country. This was an Orthodox country, not a Catholic country. And basically a lot of marriages took place between the early nobility here and the princes of Russia, which tends to be forgotten. So I went to these conferences, which is why it came out in the form of essays, because actually they're based on talks I gave on round tables. And I got talking to the monks who felt if ever there's a center of modern Gnosticism, go to Mount Athos, which is why they won't let me go there. They know what I'm thinking. They know what I'm thinking. Hesychastic prayer is pure Gnosticism. And they are proud of that tradition. And every now and again, a big hoo-ha starts. You people are Gnostics. Have you noticed that, you two? They never say no. They never say no. All they say is we've every right to pray the way we want to. So, got you with that. That's pure Gnosticism. It's pure the search for enlightenment. If you talk to the monks, they would say there's a physical Athos, which is to do with the everyday objects of mundane life. There's a religious Athos, where you get people meeting together to try and look at the significance of things. And then there's a mystical Athos, which must be inside the person, like Jerusalem is inside you, like Rome, if you're a Catholic, is inside you. You know, we've got to stop looking at this material world as a point of reference if we're interested in Gnosticism. We will never find our points of reference here. We've got to look into the subtle realms. And I don't care, like you two, how many people dislike that. There we are. We've got to. If you think there's something like gnosis, if you think there's something like if there are higher states of consciousness, there's a higher learning which leads us to freedom, we have to start looking for our points of references there. So it was actually, they didn't coin that phrase. I mean, they used other phrases when I was talking to some of the monks. But I realized when I got back from one of the conferences that, what they're actually talking about is an inner reality more than a physical location. And that gave me the chance to say, look, there's a very clear Orthodox but non-Byzantine voice in British literature, in British affairs, and it's been there forever. And, we tend to forget that really is the first couple of centuries of Christianity here when it's overtly mystical. It's not interested in going around and beating people senseless, and it's not interested in anything apart from beauty and shrines of appreciating the spirit. And that, for me, is quite sad. I mean, some of the photos I sent to you two, I don't know if we have time to use them on actual real tall people. I don't know if we're using them at all. Even they're not meant to be points of reference. One of the detractors of Madame Blavatsky, I didn't write his name down in my notes, I wish I'd done that, was saying that you can't believe the secret doctrine too, because all people who ever lived, apart from one Roman emperor, basically are the same height. You must be kidding. He never met my uncle. He was a midget. It's just not true. There have been giant people, or, what we would think are inordinately tall. Is that a sign of that recessive blood group? I don't know. It is a sign that giantism is a reality. Therefore, what have we learned by that? That is an awakener. We're being awoken to wider realities. But that's not where you look for the point of reference. Okay, those things happen. Now we have to go within to find out what it means. Otherwise, we will never find out what it means.
Yeah, I have here the slide. Let's see, add to the stream. Where is it? Is that the one you sent me? Yeah.
Yeah, that's one. That's David fighting Goliath, of course, who to me looks completely drunk. I mean, he's staggering, isn't he? So, you know, and oh, wait, that's the sort of person you meet down the pub nowadays. You know, far the worse for alcohol and too full of his own ego. Very unpleasant. Very unpleasant.
Yeah, I think that's all the slides you sent me. Let's see.
Oh, I thought forgive me, Miguel. I thought I'd sent two actual big people. I mean, I love that. That's my wonderful Swedenborg. That's Rudolf Steiner.
Right.
He does write about
Oh, there's a
Nephilim
giant.
the same way. I mean, that is an actual large person. That is Chang, the Chinese giant, roughly from 1871. His wife was his agent. His long-suffering wife sat in the corner with his agent. He was about 8 foot tall. He came to London in the mid 1860s. They never miss a trick or two in terms of business, these giant people. I've noticed that. And he was sporting around some wonderful Mandarin costumes and would meet people and shake hands, and you'd have to sort of pay for a signature, an autograph of him. And he was a bit, that's a sign. Is it the recessive blood groups? I don't know, but that's a real photograph of a real person who was 8 foot. Would it be right? The Israelites, when they come back to Moses and say we were as grasshoppers in their sight, maybe if we're not taking that as a physical description, but as a poetic description, I can understand that. I'd feel like a grasshopper compared next to him. I mean, that is big and it's powerful and God, that's really intimidating. Obviously, his wife didn't think that, otherwise she wouldn't have been his agent.
Well, also you have to keep in mind the Philistines lived by the ocean, so they had a diet of meat, fish. So the Philistines were just much taller, 6 foot, even more to the Hebrews, who were probably 4.5, 5 feet tall, and so that might have been it. They look like giants. In fact, the Old Testament says whatever Goliath was 7 foot tall or whatever, but when you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, it says he was, well, in American 6'1", but he was still a huge guy compared to your average Hebrew.
Yeah.
And more giants.
Well, that's my other favorite. He's actually not Russian. He's Belarusian. I mean, I do a lot of work with the Anglo-Belarusian Society, which alerted me to this guy. He's Fyodor, forgive me, my Belarusian is not good, right? Fyodor Machnow. He was from an outlying village. Excuse me. He was used as something of a mascot in Belarus to intimidate Russians, by the way. And you can see he's an army boy. I mean, that's his actual size. I haven't been able to get measurements on his actual size yet. But again, it's another actual historical photograph of a man. I mean, both Chang and Fyodor didn't have, I made a joke earlier, they didn't have troubles with their limbs. They were just very big people. And it shows it can happen. And the detractors of Blavatsky that say these things never occur are simply wrong. I mean, certainly in my opening address to this particular conference, I'll be showing a lot of photographs of very big people and saying, look, that's why the new anthropology really is still worth discussing. Because, nowadays, even Western academies, which were rather slow off the mark with this one, I mean, they're talking about hobbit populations, in New Guinea and places around there. I mean, they were short, let's face it, but not disproportioned. And not really because of the diet, because the diet is quite problematic sometimes in that area. They're short because they're short. That's what they're like. And maybe I have detected in Belarus that these people are meant to come from big families. So you might be talking about something along the lines of recessive blood groups. But as I say, my wonderful friend, for me, there's a very great difference between giantism and the Nephilim. And I think we've got to work, for me, on that basis.
Awesome. Let's see. That's the conference, right?
Yep.
2022. Here's a picture for you guys to see. I wonder if I can make it a little bit bigger so people can take a look at it and check it out. And David, you were talking about Steiner. Did you say he talked about the Nephilim or fallen angels?
Yeah, I mean, people get Steiner wrong. I mean, you know, what he didn't say was, I'm now repudiating everything Theosophy says. I mean, that isn't the intention. What he was saying was something we need to remember in the West, that there's nothing known on the Ganges that we don't know here. You know, he's not saying the church is without flaw. He's not, after all, the Christian community started because of the provocative work of Steiner. He's not saying that the church didn't lose its way and cause all sorts of problems. He's certainly not saying anything like that. He is saying that at our best, the mystics and contemplatives and magicians and occultists of our part of the world are on an equal footing with the boys around the Ganges. That he is saying. So he does allude to all of this. I mean, it's not really clearly stated in anything I've come across yet. I mean, a friend of mine is John Barnwell, the cultural historian and anthroposophist. I'm asking him at the moment what Steiner said about these things. But really, I think it's a little out of his purview because Blavatsky's already talking about it. And, you know, when he was writing for the newly founded Anthroposophical Society, he was writing about the giant Adam Kadmon as the blueprint for the universe, for the cosmos, and didn't really, forgive me, Rudolph, for reading into this, I don't think wanted to raise issues like the Titans amongst the Greeks to center stage, or the Rakshasas in Ceylon, in Sri Lanka, you know, these many-headed, many-armed creatures that would attack, anything that got in their way. To my mind, what he's doing is pulling back from that and saying, look, let's talk about real giantism, which is a blueprint inside all of us. And, you know, these other entities, well, let's put them into the theosophical materials where they belong, because simply, you know, he wanted to look at Christian mysteries per se, Abrahamic mysteries per se, and not really put up a counter view to everything Blavatsky said. As I say, you know, modern Steinerians, not necessarily the Anthroposophical Society, but a lot of modern Steinerians seem to have got the opinion that it's, you know, him and them against Blavatsky and Theosophy. That's actually not what he was doing at all. And he never really said, you know, I'm against A, B, C, D, and E, because he wasn't. So for my reading of those texts anyway.
Awesome. Makes sense. Yeah, that's it. That's the slide. We can go back. Giants, Steiner, Swedenborg, the Ark, Giants.
I couldn't
talk about real archons. We got the real archons right here. Amazon, Facebook, all those.
If people don't believe in real giants, they're dominating our current lives. So, you know, let's get real about what they're doing and the immense power they've got. The guy in the headscarf was my dear friend Steve Ash. I don't know why he passed. As I say, all those in the know it was too early, which is a very, very great shame. He was a performer. I don't know what they do in America. All us evil counterculture types, not so much recently for obvious reasons, used to meet at pub moots. And there'd be a few ales, and wonderful people like him would turn up and tell us about themselves and about ideas and the work they were doing. He'd end up jumping on tables and shouting at people. He was a true performer. And talking about how we all needed to do those terrible things, like think for ourselves and appreciate the beauty of the world around us. Don't sink beneath technology. So he was one of my very, very good chums, and he's missed by all of us. So that's why I'm giving the memorial lecture, not because I can say extra things that he didn't really say to the public. He was a born communicator, but we want to keep that type of spirit alive. How about this, you two? British pubs, I think they're very different from American bars, and that's not to attack American bars. I think the whole idea is different. They used to have, I mean, apart from the fact in the old days, families used to go there, and, you know, they were places where there'd be theatre, there would be places where you could get some of the finest food in the local district. All of that's gone. All of that's gone. They used to have spare rooms where you could have meetings like this. And I notice all of that's disappearing now. So That was our version of the Dutch coffee house. You know, you'd go to a pub and you'd learn subversion from people who knew what they were talking about. And it would be liberating and enlightening. You come into one of those sessions and think, my God, I've learned some stuff I never thought of before. When I was a kid, moving up to London in the 80s, I went week in, week out to all of these gatherings, and you felt a better, more charged and energized person than when you entered. The fact that even that's going now, and people like him no longer have platforms, is absolutely terrible. And I don't know what we do to recover that, even in a country like Britain.
It's a pity. Well, you are eternal, rest in peace, and yeah, let's make pubs great again. Like you said, yeah, and the fraternities and the secret societies all hung out there and brought medicine and kind of managed the neighborhood. So yeah, it's all. I'm sure it's all part of the empire shenanigans to divide us, keep us isolated, not allow us to talk and connect physically and share information. So.
I know how they do this, being a veteran of nightclub, a veteran nightclub musician. The louder the music, the further away the people are. So crank up the music or put a big distraction like sports bars. You know, they can talk about sports, but they don't talk about life, right? Their life becomes sports. So it's all those distractions, loud music, sports, whatever, instead of talking to each other.
Yeah. Oh my God! What are we all reducing each other to? You know, we've got to all become Gnostics. We've got to all become Gnostics and remember the true path. Yeah, machines.
Yeah. Oh well. Now you know. Next time you're at a bar or whatever, try to just connect with people. Tell them to turn down the music. Who knows? Go somewhere else. But yeah, we. So as we're getting closer to the end, one more question from the audience, Vance.
Oh,
roll the dice on one question. Maybe two if David can answer it quickly.
Okay, I'm searching here. Let's see. There's one about Tartaria. There's one about here's a good one. What do you think about this from Dave Skylark on Facebook? NFL-IM, the Nephilim corporatism. Does that mean anything to you?
Is that about the NFL, the National Football League?
I don't know. NFL-IM. That's the way he spelled it. I thought maybe there's a corporation.
Well, Chris Knoll sometimes calls it the NFL-leam as a joke. You know how like
that's it.
In football, in American football, you've got all this cool symbolism, and the Super Bowl show.
There you go. You got
all this ritual and symbolism and all that other stuff.
So, NFL, yeah.
I think they're evil, but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, it's over here on this side of the pond. So as they say,
I like a game of cricket. I don't even like English soccer.
Really?
Yeah, I like a good game of cricket because it's an excuse to drink endless cocktails in the pavilion.
That's what my English friends tell me. They don't even remember who won after 3 days. It's just
oh yeah, who cares? Who cares?
Got one from Astrox here. If these entities are purely thought forms, why do they even bother to take on visual forms in this material realm? I think we covered a little bit of that before. But
we covered a bit of that. Nobody actually is directly saying they take on visible form in this realm. What you're doing is looking with other eyes at other realms. Human beings are multi-leveled creatures. We are not simply suits of meat. We are not simply biochemical mechanisms. We have levels of consciousness, we have souls, we have spirits, and we interact with those realms and spheres in the appropriate way where we have perceptions. Therefore, I don't think they're bothering. I think we can see all that happening on other levels. And that is partly one of the secrets of writing systems in the past, which tended to be hieroglyphic. What they're trying to do is record what we would say in a very primitive way is visionary experience. Then, you know, if people in the past weren't fools, there's only one myth in this world, and that's everybody that lived more than 500 years ago is an idiot. That is just completely wrong. You know, if they wanted to write about cookery, they write about cookery. If they wanted to write about building pyramids, and yes, they do, it's not just a complete mystery, they write about pyramids. Therefore, if they want to write about religious materials, they write about it in a religious way. Am I saying as an addendum to all of that these beings can't somehow crystallize and make their presence felt here? No, I'm not saying that. I think they do. But, you know, again, that's not my area of expertise. I've not really thought that one through enough. And also for me, the Gnostic part of me would think that's rather missing the point anyway, since this world is not the be all and end all. We've got to look at subtle realms to find ourselves and where this is all going on and why. Therefore, to keep looking back at this world has missed the point, with respect.
No, makes perfect sense. Regardless of the Nephilim and what's going on, and take the journey inward. That's where the stars are. That's where time and space breaks down. That's where the collective unconscious and other universes are. Nothing has changed, regardless of what's going outside in the material world. So, how do you feel about spirituality in the UK? Is it positive view, negative view? Where are you, David?
Do you know, you've hit something very, very important there. I don't think the UK is a particularly religious country.
No.
I do think it's a very spiritual country. What's happening to the got to be so careful. What's happening to the working orders here is abysmal. They're being treated like simpletons, mechanical simpletons that can be used for the big corporations or the landowners in any way whatsoever. I thought all that had gone, but it's coming back. Dare I say, even right now, let me give a different example. I dallianced with Congregationalism many, many years ago and actually had charge of a Congregationalist church, Coverdale and Ebenezer, which was a hideous concrete block in the middle of a council estate. If people don't think British football thugs are real, we used to meet them every week. They used to come and sing hymns. I've no idea why to this day, and show their physical presence. I was told on a number of occasions, "Don't worry, Dave, you don't have any problems. Don't worry, Dave," which made me very nervous indeed, although I was very honoured to hear that. If you look at the authorities, the local council, the way these people were treated in their daily lives, in their accommodation, in their food choices, not that there was much of a choice, it's like crumbs from the table, as the good book says. You don't question us. Get on with your life. You have no life, really. You're stupid. You suck. Just get on with things. Talking to them, I encountered not only some of the most powerful spiritual thirsts I'd ever come across, they were in such restricted physical circumstances that they were nearly forced to go inward. If I talk to the Wiccans, I talk to Wiccans nowadays, I talk to heathens, I talk to theosophists, being the radical that I am. All of them really, not all of them are posh like in the old days. When the Theosophical Society started in London, they were very elevated people socially, and they're still there. But it tends to be the salt of the earth type now. People looking for answers, people looking for greater expressions of themselves that are genuinely searching for spirit. It saddens me that the two are so distinct in Britain. I don't think that's an American problem, but I had some American ministers shouting at me recently that actually it was a problem. I don't know. I'm not American. If it is going in that direction, I'm really sorry to hear it, because I wish it hadn't gone in that direction here. But certainly people like me come as a shock, that they will talk to anybody and allow that to take place in a chapel. That comes as a shock now, whereas it shouldn't be a shock, and that should be the way things are. So not a religious country, but a deeply spiritual country, and one that's looking for answers. But the trouble is those answers are held back with terrible strictures like time, availability, and actual, socioeconomic choices, which are designed increasingly to just flatten people. We live in terrible times.
I agree. Same here in America. But yeah, let's fight the good fight, finish the race, and keep the faith, as Pseudo Paul says. We'll get there. We shall get there. So I think we better wrap it up. Great conversation. Check out David's the conference in October. There will be an audio version of this on all podcast provider platforms probably tomorrow. And again, great shows coming out on so many good topics. Please support this show, support David, support people in the alternative media. these Gnostic times, this Philip K. Dick world, and this age of Hermes is not ending. We're never going back to the old normal. So it is up to us to envision a better world, write a better gospel, and live a better myth, as I always say. So, but that's my little tangent. First, I'll say for the audience, thank you very much. Great questions. You guys are amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep shining a light. Keep playing those Eddie Rabbit songs, and keep doing what you're doing, getting close to your authentic self. And Vance, thanks for keeping us company here in the desert.
Oh, it was great. Love being with you, David and Miguel, and the audience. Sorry for those I couldn't ask the questions for, but back into my UFO on April 1st.
And David, always great to talk to you. And yeah, good luck with all your projects.
Well, I need to announce one last thing, of course. I think I've managed to hogtie Miguel Connor into being on the Nephilim Anthropology Conference panel next year.
I'll be there.
Watch this space, everyone. You're in for a Gnostic roller coaster.
I'll represent the Gnostic point of view very well. So we'll have a good time. It will be an honor to meet you and hang out and see what shenanigans we can do, what spiritual insights we can find. So yes, I'll be there, and awesome. Well, everybody, thank you very much. As I always say, thanks for being here. Thanks for being yourself, your true self, here in the desert of the real. Hello and goodbye. As always, until the next time, have a good weekend, everybody.